Hi there. We're going to have a little go at creating a grid system for you to use for your poster design. We're going to use the VandeGraaf method, and we're just going to do a real quick setup for it. Something you can adapt and experiment with, but if I show you the basics, then you can get going with it. So we're going to end up with something like this, but with a few more complications because we're going to be adding additional guides. I'll take you through this in a moment, how we're creating all this. Okay, so we'll start from the top, File, and we're going to go to the print setup, and we're going to go for an A3, I think, to begin with. Now, just have a quick look over here at our dimensions, 297 by 420 millimeters. We're going to use 300 pixels per inch and an RGB color mode with 8 bits of data. You have got more bits of data, but for what we're doing, you don't need any more. This RGB color mode with 8 bits of data in effect gives you 16.7 million colors, so a very rich palette. Okay, so here we go. There's our A3 document, and as you know, A3 is half of A2, so we're going to double this. We're going to go in there. Make sure that your canvas size has got the relative box ticked, so you've got 0 and 0 in here, and all we're going to do is add 29.7 into the width, like so. That'll double the document. Actually, just before we double the document, let's do this. Let's just fill it with colour, and now let's double the document again. So 29.7. Okay, so just nudge that colour block left or right. And I'm just using the left and right arrow keys there and the shift key together, and that will give you a fairly accelerated nudge. And then I'm going up into the top corner. I'm just going to use that's Control and plus to zoom in, and then I'm using the space bar, which gives you the little hand icon, and then you can just drag your image around while you're holding the space bar. And then so Control and plus to zoom in, space bar just to move your image. And then I'm just going to use the Move tool, which is V on the keyboard, should you need to change to it. And I'm just going to nudge with the left and right arrows, just to make sure that I'm absolutely not overlapping too much. And as you can see, just going to nudge in. One nudge is 1 unit, and that is perfect. So that is perfectly aligned. So in my document, I've now got my A2 document divided right down the middle. So we've got A3 over here, A3 there. So what I can do is just put another little layer in there, drag it to the bottom. I'm just going to fill it with white paint. So, and switch those over, fill it with white paint. So that's my background. Get into the habit of naming your layers. That's your A3. And we can lock those two. We're not doing anything with them, we're just using them for background, etc. We can turn them on and off as we choose later on. Okay, so what we need to do firstly is get familiar with using our rulers. So Control and R brings your rulers to the front. You can of course go to View and Rulers, but Control and R is a lot easier. And then from here we got to be using our Move tool, Select and Move, and from here we can be dragging guidelines down, which we will be doing in course, but not quite yet. The problem that we have is that these guidelines are fantastic and so commonly used, but one of the problems that they have is they don't offer a diagonal guideline, which is exactly what we need. So if we firstly create a line, we're going to use our line tool to make our diagonal. So put our line tool up. Make sure that in the settings for the line up here, we're going to use shape. We're going to use a fill of a particular color. I'm going to choose a kind of purple. I'm going to make sure that the stroke is set to transparent. And now I can create a line. So first one I probably should make is a vertical. I'm holding the shift key, by the way, there, just to make sure that that line stays entirely straight. So the shift key will let me do that. And then if I use this little function in here, change that to canvas, and I should be able to go like so, align to the middle of the canvas, and it'll be perfectly aligned right in the middle of the canvas. That's nice. I'm going to duplicate that layer, Control J, and I'm going to rotate that line 90 degrees, so Control and T for transform, right click, rotate 90 degrees, and as you can see it's a little bit short, so I'm going to hold the shift key again and just drag it out so that it fits all the way across. And one more time, we're going to just go to our line tool and say yes, and we're going to make sure that it's aligning to the canvas, and we're going to go to the middle of the document, and that should, oh, he says that should do it, but it didn't do it. So let's do it one more time. There it is, hit return, and am I just not seeing it? Yeah, sorry, I wasn't seeing it because I just needed to zoom in a little bit there just to actually visualize it. It's only 3 pixels in diameter, sorry, in width, so you might need to zoom in just to be able to see it. Okay, so make sure it's aligned to the middle of the document. Now what we need is our 2 diagonals, and we're going to create another line for that, so I'll just hide that for a second so we can see everything. Get my diagonal tool, sorry, get my line tool, and I'm going to try and create a diagonal from point to point, so I'm going to use my snaps, snap to guides, grid, layer, document bounds, which basically they're all active. Just to show you that again, snaps to document bounds, layers and guides. You could just say all, which is absolutely fine. And I'm going to try and go from point to point. So this is a little bit tricky because we've got to be as accurate as we possibly can. So I want to get right on the money there, right on that little corner piece there. Right in there, nice. And then right up to the top. This is the problem because we've got to go up. I'm just dragging up to that corner and I want to get that alignment just right. Believe me, if you get this right now, it saves you a lot of hassle later on when things don't align up perfectly. So that's not perfect. You see, I just missed it ever so bloody slightly. If I zoom right in, you can see it's just a tiny bit off, so I'll redo that. I know it seems a bit weird, but I'm going to do it again. So go to the corner, right down in the corner, get my align tool, and just start again. Pretty good. Okay. Unfortunately, at this point, I can't use the control and minus thing to zoom out and move across. I've just got to keep dragging. So I just drag up into the corner, and eventually I'll get there. It's painful, but there has got to be a better way. I just don't know it. And if somebody does, let me know. Oh god, that looks good. So, okay, so 36.3, I'm zooming in. Looks like I'm right in the middle of it, I think. And if I'm not, I'm going to go mad. Okay, good. I think that's it. Hit the enter key just to accept the creation of the line. Way off. Alright, let's do that again. So, undo that. Don't know how we got so far off target there. Why don't we do it a little bit rough and ready? Because it's getting a bit silly. How's that? Not bad. Kind of hits the middle point. I just want to nudge it slightly down. There we go. And you know what? It's okay. I know this is irritating, but we're just going to Control and T. That's the transform for that line. Hopefully, just that line. Yeah, That's the only one I want to control and T, just that line. I'm just turning those layers off so I don't do the same for anything else. And I want to move it just, I don't know, 0.02. You see the little tiny turn there? Maybe 0.03, maybe 0.025. Alright, that's a bit mental, but we'll go with it. Okay, first diagonal created. And if I zoom in, you'll be able to see the others. Okay, so now I'm going to duplicate that layer. So Control and J duplicates the layer. And I need to Control and T to transform it. I'm going to right click and say flip horizontally. And then I'm going to nudge that into position. And that's not bad. Okay, so turn those two off for a moment. We just see the division, the first division that we created. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select those. So I'm holding the Shift key while I'm clicking each of those layers, and then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say Merge Visible. That collapses them all into one layer, which means I now have a little division. So let's call that our first VandeGraaf 01. Okay. Alright, so that's my first division. Now what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate that layer again. So Control and J. And this time around we're going to go Control and T for the transform. And we're just, I need to get in there and I'm just going to not do that. I'll do that again. I'm going to just bring it in like so to the middle to get my first division. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer and I'm going to slide it across. So just turn that one off and just grab that one. And get a little bit tricky, so just double click that. Double click that. Shift and move tools. And I'm just basically going to move this to the middle. It already, just while you're moving it through, it already creates some interesting subdivisions while you're going across the page. But basically we're going to end up with something like this. Okay, I'll turn the other layer on and we should have lots of little divisions now. So just do a quick save of that. File, Save As, and we'll call it A2 VandeGraaf Grid. Okay, perfect. Alright, good. So let's have a little look. What have we got now in terms of new divisions that we can use to help us shape our document? Well, we've got our little horizontal there. I'm going to use the guides for this next section because it's all horizontals and verticals that we're doing. So I'm just going to use guides from here on in. Okay, so we've now got a nice division. We can carry this subdividing process up further and further as we go through. So there's a lot to take in, but we've got our very first subdivision where things are starting to overlap, and these are going to give us our structure behind where we start to place our objects. I mean, obviously what I might do now is come across to there and say, well, there's another point where they cross over. So that's a nice little division. And there's another little nice division there. Okay, we're now getting a bit of structure to the document now. Okay, so let's add to that. And take our line tool again. Everything's still the same. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the middle here and I'm going to go to this point here where I already have a division. And I'm going to come across and go from there to there. I'm going to do the same on the other side, from there to there. With the snaps on, everything should align pretty perfectly at this point. Okay, once those two divisions are in, we've got an important alignment resolved, and that is this line here. Let's get a horizontal guide right through the middle of those two intersections. And the next thing we need to do is, where that line and this diagonal cross, create another guideline there, and then do the same on the other side. So follow it across to here, okay, and so on. So this now, this area in here, sorry, I need to put another division in there where that cross there occurs. So let's just align that and do the same there. Okay, so what you've now got fundamentally, and I'll just pop this on a new layer so you can see it. So a new layer, and I'll just call this VDG, so color VDG as in VandeGraaf. I'm just going to place a little block of color. In fact, I'll use a shape. And there it is. One shape. Now, obviously, later on we could go further and divide this a little bit further down here. In fact, I'm just going to, before I do that, I'll go back one little bit and I'll pull that division in. So the division is there. Where this line crosses over here, that's another important little division. So in the VandeGraaf model, we now have a very kind of dynamic control of that space with one shape there. I'll just duplicate that shape, so Control J to duplicate it, and I'll pull it across to the other space over here. Okay, so the structure of the document is starting to add up. However, that's just the beginning of this subdivision. It's quite quick, but you can get in and experiment with further subdivisions. And yeah, then you can experiment further as to how you wish to introduce your blocks. Okay, so your blocks might be in here, and then equally you might say, well, actually I've got an interesting division there, or I have an interesting division here, and now you start to have a dynamic patterning across the page, which is utterly reliant on a grid, which of course later on all the grids will vanish. Turn the guides off. But the relationship between them starts to make sense to the eye because it's all relating back to a fundamental subdivision of that space. Okay, that's enough to get on with. Cheers. See you later.